Hey guys, it's Toniko Pantoja, and today I want to talk about the feeling of falling behind. Whether it's your skills, your career, you just feel like you're not growing as much as you want, or you feel like you're growing a bit too slow compared to everyone else. And maybe there's this overall feeling that people are outmatching you. And some of these people can also be much younger or more inexperienced than you are. As creative people, I'm sure that many of you guys have felt this very similar feeling, this feeling of there is a standard or an idea of where you should be in your life or in your career or in your skills. And maybe you can't help but think that you compare yourself to other people where they have the thing that you wish you had or you were at the level of. Or you've wished that you've accomplished a certain amount of things that this other person has done. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because time to time in my life and in my career, I definitely feel this way, that I feel like I'm falling behind. So, when I feel like this, I like to remind myself certain things that help me ground myself and still keep moving forward. Some of you guys may have heard some of these statements before many times, and some of these are things that I recently picked up that I do want to share with you guys. The most common thing that you've probably heard is that everyone goes at their own pace. So, for me, for example, I am a very slow learner. Like, it takes me a very long time to understand a concept or to get better at a certain skill. Things just don't click to me right away. It takes me a lot of time. Now, something that I always remind myself is that I'm constantly learning. Like, even though I'm taking things slow, I'm still discovering something about whatever I'm doing. I've become a lot more reflective where I think about what I got out of an experience, what I learned from it, and try to see if I can hone in on that if it is a really important thing. So, I would also encourage you guys to just be a bit more reflective of what you picked up and just think about the things that you're picking up as you go along. Now, another thing that I do want to bring up is that a lot of people are exposed to different resources when it comes to growing and learning. Some people depended on internet resources, whereas others depended on a mentorship. Some people were self educated, some people went to school. Maybe we were in a time where resources were not available to us, but then as resources got a lot more available online, the younger generation is able to pick up on things much faster because all the things that we wished we had when we were their age is already available to them. An example is having the resources to learn and work in anime. This was something that a lot of us wish we had, let's say 10 or 20 years ago. Now it's a lot more accessible. It's easier to get a universal understanding of anime work and to find a community of it where everyone shares the same terminology. Now, this is not necessarily an excuse to say, oh, we're not at a level we wish we were at because we did not have the resources that they had. In some cases, we may have had more resources than some people who just happen to be way better at us and stuff. Now that resources have become a lot more universal, that are now accessible to us, it's also our job to take advantage of that stuff we have right now. The third one I want to bring up are life circumstances. So, a lot of us have different paths in our lives. Things happen in our life that actually affects our skill, our career, or our craft. This could be circumstances with money, circumstances with family and friends that actually affect the line of work. And I feel like these other things, these other aspects in your life are just as important, or if not more important than, let's say, this animation shindig. And sometimes you might need to spend a lot of that energy taking care of that stuff. That's totally fine. And as a human being, I think this stuff is very important because it teaches you what to prioritize on what's actually important to you. For me, for example, one of the biggest things that I had to spend a long time is working with a visa in the United States. I can't just accept any offer. I have to go through a legal system with certain lawyers, with certain studios, on getting me a visa so I can actually do work for them. And within the studio environment, that's kind of hard because sometimes these studios are asking you to start next week or very soon. But sometimes these visa situations, the paperwork for that to get approved, can sometimes take multiple weeks to a few months. I would sometimes think about where I would be in my career if I was able to accept these types of opportunities, but that's all in the past. I actually had to prioritize my personal work, being part of expos, exhibitions, and festivals, so I can make my case for my green card at the time look stronger. There were times where I had to be out of the United States because I wasn't allowed to stay in the country. Now, the next one I want to bring up is that quote unquote failures and hiccups are things that you must go through. Now, this is something that one of my jiu-jitsu coaches actually preaches, which is in order to be great, in order to be good at something, you have to fail a lot. Now, it's not my place to say the reason why someone didn't make it in the career or something is because they failed at something. That I don't think is a very fair assessment. Like, there were bad experiences I had with certain studios, with certain jobs, and my first reaction is to see them as failures, as deep down pains, as stains in my career. But I think with episodes like this, whether it's a quote unquote failure or a hiccup, there's a lot of things that you can get out of it. You can think about what could have been done differently for your next venture. If there were any toxic traits from that certain experience, whether it's certain people or the workflow, you can actually pinpoint that and try to figure out ways on how to avoid that in the future. Or the pain of that quote unquote failure or the slacking behind is going to teach you another personal lesson that's going to take you far. Like, here's an example. When I got fired or let go from a studio work because I wasn't up to the standard of the work that they were asking for, I would try to figure out what are some weaknesses that I have that I can work on. But at the same time, I also realized that there were a lot of people in this production that were not very supportive and sometimes very toxic. So now it allowed me to assess the types of people I do want to cater myself around. But it allowed me to think about qualities that I liked in a production or within people in that production and qualities that I did not like at all. And try to focus on what were the good ones so I can try and bring back that good culture in. So another thing that I do want to bring up is your identity is more than your craft. So back then, I always surrounded my overall personality as someone who just does animation, who does a bit of YouTube tutorials and teaches, and then does their personal work. And that was just my overall identity. So some of the things that I do think about now is my upbringing. I think about the religion I was raised in. I think about the culture that I grew up in, the place environment, what the people were like there, and how do all of these affect the choices I make now, or how do I live my life now? Are there passions and hobbies that actually affected that? When I sometimes teach animation classes, some of my students were former lawyers, former doctors, all from very different parts of the world, and I feel like that stuff is super fascinating? And it just reminds me that, my overall main passion for animation is really just a small world. I think back then, growing up as an Asian who was exposed to Western culture, and then at some point in my life, especially my youth, was low key ashamed of my identity and ethnicity, is learning how to sort of appreciate the things from that make me who I am. So it's always good to reflect on that stuff. Another thing that I do want to bring up is there are other passions I've been taking that really humbled me. So, one example is learning a language. I've been trying to low key learn a bit of Espanol, but like I said, I learn things very slow. So, it's very, very difficult for me, and I'm still not at the place that I wish I was at, but it's kind of nice that I'm learning something new. Another big passion that I do have is Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. I've actually forced myself to compete, and I got choked out. I passed out. But I think a lot of these hobbies or passions are just so humbling because it shows that there's so much more to the thing that I can pick up from, I can learn from. And low key, there are a lot of animation people that I personally know that can't do what I can do. But of course, there's also a lot of things that other people in animation do, other things outside of animation that I can't do. The important takeaway is that there's a lot of other things in life that humble you. And I think that really changes the overall perspective that I have with my relationship to animation. Now, the next one I want to bring up is the people that you find yourself comparing yourself to or you feel like you're falling behind from, maybe they have their own insecurities. And this is something that I've noticed a lot in our industry. Like, we look up to them, but some of these people are super insecure about doing the right work, being perfect. When something is wrong with our animation industry or community, they flip the fuck out, they go crazy, and they take it out on other people. Some of these people in the animation industry are terrible leaders where they actually make everyone's lives worse. One thing that I will say is that I'm not someone who will just poke fun at someone else's insecurities. It's just something that I do notice, especially with people who are seen as quote unquote up there in our field of work. I just think you just got to be a bit more mindful that even if some of these people are, let's say, ahead of you, they have their own baggage that they're dealing with. Now, the last thing that I do want to bring up is that it is a good idea to vary your community. So, I have a lot of friends in animation, and they're my homies, and I love them. But I also have a set of friends that are outside of animation. Some at the gym, some from jiu-jitsu academies, some tech people here and there. And if I were to talk about my work in animation with them, they'll probably say, yo, dude, that's amazing, or that's pretty cool. Anyways, let's talk about something else. And I think a lot of these different views, even though they contradict each other, give you a sense of perspective. So politically, I am more left leaning, but I do have a lot of friends who are, let's say, quote unquote centrists or lean towards the right. Now, in a lot of cases, I don't agree with them politically. And if I were to talk about them with some of my animation friends who are way more left, they would tell me to ditch those friends. But at the end of the day, you kind of have to stop trying to compare what's different and try to figure out the common values that you guys do share. Sometimes actions speak way louder than words. Like in animation, there's a lot of people high up there who like to talk about the value of helping people out, being a community, being family, but they don't really follow those dogmas or those principles. I will tell you right now that sometimes they just don't make the effort to do that, or there's a lot of clickiness to it. Whereas there are people out there that I don't really agree with them politically, but they will go out of their way to help me when I need help and support. So I think it's always a good idea to have communities outside of your main craft. And for me, it's animation. So these are just some of the things that I do remind myself when, let's say, I feel like I'm falling behind. I think about everyone's pace being different. I think about life circumstances. I think about the importance of hiccups and failures in, let's say, your life and career and what you can gain and learn from that. I think about my overall identity as a human being, and I think about other passions that humble myself. I think about resources that are available to us right now and resources that wasn't available to us way back then. Lastly, I always try to vary up my community just so that I don't feel like I'm in an echo chamber as much. That incepts certain anxieties and insecurities I have about myself with, let's say, animation. Now, one thing that I do want to bring up is there's no one just like you, you know? You can draw like someone and you can animate like someone, but there's no one like you in animation. There's people who are similar to me in, let's say, our upbringing or our backgrounds, but deep down, we're all just very different people. I think with our field of work, we tend to try to adapt and be similar to each other so we can fit in a category where we can belong to, let's say, a team, a studio, a community, so we can survive. It's kind of tribalistic. But yeah, that's all I'll say. There's no one else like you, and it's a good idea to try and focus in on that and see what are some things you can explore with that. Anyways, that's all. Bye. Interested in learning hand-drawn animation or learning how to finish an animated shot from beginning to end? Have a look at the store where you'll find the complete Introduction to 2D Animation video course, tutorials, and other resources. Learn classical animation approaches, drawing, lectures, techniques, and other process videos. Visit the store through the link in the description below.